Green Mill Cocktail Lounge, Chicago, 1932, November, 11 at night. Louis Armstrong was 31 years old, standing on stage, playing When You're Smiling. His trumpet filled the club. The crowd was mesmerized, but Louis had to be careful, very careful, because at the front table sat a special guest, Vincent Marcello, Vinny, one of Chicago's most powerful figures, 45 years old, dangerous, respected, feared. The club belonged to him. Beside him sat his wife, Angela, 28 years old, beautiful, elegant. But tonight, she'd had too much champagne. When Louis reached the most emotional part of the ballad, something happened. Angela jumped to her feet, threw her hands in the air, and screamed, loud, so loud the entire club could hear, "Louis, I love you! Take me with you!" The club went silent instantly. Completely. Music stopped. Conversation ceased. Everyone froze, because everyone knew what it meant when someone made a public declaration of love to a mob boss's wife. It meant a death sentence. Everyone looked at Vinny. Vinny's face had turned red. His hand moved to the table, where a weapon sat. Louis's life hung in that moment. What would he do? What would he say? One wrong word, one wrong move, and everything could end. But Louis Armstrong never panicked, took a deep breath or smiled, and said something that shocked the entire club, something that stopped Vinny, something that saved his life. A bellow, a confession, a death threat. 1932, Chicago. Louis Armstrong was on stage in mob boss Vincent Marcello's club, and Vinny's wife, Angela, had just done something that should never be done. She'd declared her love for Louis in front of the entire club. "I love you, Louis!" The club had frozen. Everyone knew, in the mob world, this was a death sentence. Anyone who showed interest in Vinny's wife drew Vinny's wrath. And now Angela had made it public. Vinny's face was crimson. His hand had moved to the weapon on his table. Louis's band members were panicking. Customers were preparing to flee. Everyone knew something was about to happen, something bad. But Louis remained calm, lowered his trumpet, approached the microphone, and began to speak. What he said would save Angela, would calm Vinny, would change Louis's life, because the next day something would happen, something nobody expected. Vinny would come to Louis's restaurant. Everyone would be terrified, but Vinny was coming to say thank you. Or was he? Was he coming for revenge? Louis didn't know, but he would find out very soon. Before we explore this incredible story of grace under pressure, diplomatic genius, and the power of choosing the right words, please subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. What Louis Armstrong did in those crucial seconds will teach you about leadership, respect, and survival. To understand that November night in 1932, we need to go back. Not just hours or days, but months, years. To understand who Louis Armstrong was, what challenges he'd faced, and why performing in mob-controlled Chicago was both an opportunity and a constant danger. Louis Daniel Armstrong was born August 4th, 1901, New Orleans, Louisiana. Grew up in extreme poverty. Father abandoned the family. Mother struggled to survive. Louis raised himself on dangerous streets, found music as salvation, found the trumpet as his voice. By the late 1920s, Louis had become one of America's premier jazz musicians, revolutionary trumpet player, innovative improviser, creator of new techniques. But success brought new challenges, especially in Chicago. Chicago in the early 1930s was a city controlled by organized crime. Prohibition was still in effect. Alcohol was illegal, but nightclubs sold it anyway. And those nightclubs were run by powerful men with connections, with influence, with the ability to make or break careers, with the willingness to use force when necessary. For black musicians like Louis, navigating this world required more than talent, required diplomacy, intelligence, the ability to read situations, to know when to speak and when to stay silent, to understand power dynamics, to respect boundaries. Louis had learned these skills through experience, through watching, through surviving. By 1932, Louis was performing regularly at mob-owned venues throughout Chicago. The money was good, the exposure was valuable, but the risks were constant. One wrong word to the wrong person could end a career, or worse. Louis had seen it happen, had watched talented musicians disappear, had heard stories of performers who'd crossed invisible lines, who'd shown disrespect, who'd paid terrible prices. So Louis developed a strategy: be professional, Be respectful. Be diplomatic. Never get involved in club business. Never show interest in owners' wives or girlfriends. Never take sides in disputes. Just play music, make people happy, go home. This strategy had worked well. Louis was respected, welcomed, protected in a way. Club owners liked him because he brought crowds, because he was professional, because he never caused problems. But Louis knew this protection was fragile, based on goodwill, on not making mistakes, on maintaining boundaries. And on the night of November 19th, 1932, those boundaries would be tested in the most dramatic way possible. The information in this video is compiled from documented interviews, archival news, books, and historical reports. For narrative purposes, some parts are dramatized and may not represent 100% factual accuracy. We also use AI-assisted visuals and AI narration for cinematic reconstruction. The use of AI does not mean the story is fake. It is a storytelling tool. Our goal is to recreate the spirit of that era as faithfully as possible. Enjoy watching. Green Mill Cocktail Lounge was one of Chicago's most famous nightclubs, located on North Broadway. Known for great jazz, for illegal liquor, for being a favorite hangout of powerful people. The club had a complicated history, had changed hands several times. By 1932, it was controlled by Vincent Marcello. Vinny was a composite of several real figures from that era, connected to the larger network of Chicago's organized leadership, ran several businesses, controlled territory, commanded respect and fear. Vinny loved jazz, genuinely appreciated the music, would come to Green Mill several nights a week, always sat at the same front table, always brought associates or family, always received special treatment. Louis had performed for Vinny many times, always professional, always respectful. Vinny seemed to like Louis, would nod appreciatively during solos, would tip generously, would tell other club owners that Louis was quality. This was valuable. In Chicago's nightclub scene, having Vinny's approval meant work, meant safety, meant respect. Louis appreciated this, never took it for granted, always made sure to acknowledge Vinny, to play his favorite songs, to maintain that professional relationship. On November 19th, Louis arrived at Green Mill at 9 o'clock. His usual time, band members were already there, setting up, tuning instruments, preparing for the night. Louis chatted with them, warmed up his trumpet, reviewed the set list. At 10:30 they began, started with upbeat numbers, get the crowd energized, get people dancing. The club was packed, Saturday night, prime time, every table full, bar crowded, cigarette smoke thick in the air. Vinny arrived at 10:45, with his wife Angela and 2 associates. Hostess immediately led them to the front table. The best table, always reserved for Vinny, Louis noticed from the stage, nodded in Vinny's direction. Vinny nodded back. Professional acknowledgement, Louis continued playing. Angela Marcello was younger than Vinny, 28 to his 45, beautiful woman, always dressed elegantly, usually quiet, polite, seemed to genuinely enjoy the music. Louis had seen her at Green Mill before, always with Vinny, always proper, always appropriate. Tonight seemed the same. At first, the band played for about an hour, various songs, mix of upbeat and slow. The crowd was loving it, dancing, drinking, having a great time. At 11:30, Louis announced they'd play When You're Smiling, a popular ballad, romantic, emotional, perfect for late evening. The crowd quieted down. Couples moved closer on the dance floor. Louis began the trumpet solo. Slow, melodic, each note expressing feeling. The club was enchanted. This was why people came to hear Louis Armstrong. Not just technical skill, emotional depth, the ability to make an instrument speak, to make people feel. Louis was about halfway through the ballad when it happened. Angela Marcello stood up. Suddenly, dramatically, her chair scraped backward. Everyone near her table looked over. Startled, confused, Angela raised both hands above her head like she was reaching for something or someone. And then she shouted, her voice cutting through the music, through the quiet room. "Louis, I love you. Take me with you." Time seemed to stop. Louis's trumpet faltered. Just for a second, the band members froze, the dancing stopped. Every conversation ceased. The entire club turned to look. First at Angela, then at Vinny. Because everyone knew, everyone understood what had just happened. Angela Marcello, wife of Vincent Marcello, had just publicly declared love for another man, for the performer on stage, in front of her husband, in front of the entire club. In mob culture, this was unforgivable. This was the ultimate disrespect. To a man, to a boss, to someone with power. The consequences were understood, swift, severe, final. Vinny's face changed. The pleasant expression disappeared, replaced by shock. Then anger. His face turned red, visibly red, even in the dim club lighting. His jaw clenched. His hands moved to the table. One hand specifically, moving towards something. Everyone knew what was there. Vinny always kept protection close. This was Chicago, 1932. Dangerous times, dangerous business. Louis stood on stage, trumpet still at his lips, mind racing. This was the worst possible situation. Angela was clearly intoxicated. Champagne courage, saying things she wouldn't normally say, doing things she wouldn't normally do. But intentions didn't matter. Results mattered. And the result was Vinny's wife had publicly humiliated him, put Louis in an impossible position, created a crisis. Louis had seconds to respond, maybe less. Every eye in the club was on him, waiting, watching, wondering what he'd do. If he ignored Angela, she'd feel rejected, might get more emotional, make things worse. If he acknowledged her inappropriately, Vinny would see it as disrespect, as accepting her advance, as betrayal. If he handled it wrong, people could get hurt. Angela could face consequences. Louis could face consequences. The entire situation could explode. Louis lowered his trumpet, slowly, deliberately, gave himself a moment to think, to find the right words, the diplomatic words, the words that would save everyone. He smiled, not a mocking smile, a kind smile, a gentle smile, stepped to the microphone and spoke. His voice was calm, warm, respectful. "Ma'am," he began, addressing Angela directly but formally. "You got great taste," acknowledging her words without accepting them. "But I gotta tell you something. Creating anticipation, making everyone listen, that man sitting next to you, redirecting attention to Vinny, making Vinny part of the conversation. Oh, he's way more dangerous than my trumpet. Complimenting Vinny's power, acknowledging his status, using humor to diffuse tension, and he clearly loves you more than I ever could. Affirming the marriage, putting Vinny in the position of the real romantic, the true lover. How about I dedicate this next song to both of you, including both of them, making it about their relationship, not Louis. The most beautiful couple in Chicago. Final compliment, elevating them, making them the heroes, not Louis." The club held its breath, waited for Vinny's reaction. This was his moment, his choice. Everyone watched. Vinny sat still for what felt like forever. Probably only seconds, but felt eternal. His hand was still on the table, near the weapon. His face was still red. But something was changing. Louis had given him an out. A way to save face. A way to reframe the situation. Instead of his wife disrespecting him by loving another man, his wife was so moved by beautiful music that she expressed emotion. Instead of Louis accepting the advance, Louis had redirected it back to Vinny, had called Vinny more dangerous, more powerful, more important, had affirmed Vinny's relationship with Angela, had complimented them as a couple. Slowly, Vinny's expression changed. The anger softened. Not disappeared, but softened. He looked at Angela, who was still standing, looking confused, embarrassed, scared. Vinny stood up, took Angela's hand, gently, and helped her sit down. Then he looked at Louis, nodded, just once. A small nod, but it meant everything. It meant acceptance. It meant Louis had handled it correctly. It meant the crisis was over. The club exhaled, collectively. Conversations resumed, quietly at first, then normally. The band started playing again, the song Louis had promised, dedicated to Vinny and Angela. Louis played beautifully, emotionally, but differently now, playing for them, celebrating them, making them the center of attention in a positive way. As the song continued, Vinny leaned over, whispered something to Angela. She nodded, looked down, clearly embarrassed, clearly understanding what had almost happened. The rest of the evening passed without incident. Louis finished his set. The crowd applauded. Life continued. But something had changed. Louis had navigated an impossible situation, had saved Angela from consequences, had saved Vinny's pride, had saved himself through words, through diplomacy, through understanding human nature. When the show ended, Louis packed his trumpet. Exhausted, relieved, ready to go home. Have you ever had to choose exactly the right words in a tense situation? How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments, but the story wasn't over, not even close. The next day, Sunday, November 20th, Louis was at his own place, Armstrong's Jazz Cafe. A restaurant Louis had opened earlier that year, small place, comfortable, served food, had music in evenings, was Louis's pride, his investment in his future, his piece of Chicago. Louis arrived at 2 in the afternoon. Sunday was usually slow. Time to do paperwork. Plan next week's menus, relax a little. His band members were there, sitting at a table, eating, talking, rehashing the previous night. Everyone was amazed, couldn't believe what happened, couldn't believe how Louis handled it. Did you see Vinny's face? One band member said. I thought we were all done. Another added, that was the smartest thing I ever heard anyone say. Louis smiled, accepted the compliments, but felt uncomfortable with them. Didn't want to seem like he was bragging. Had just done what felt necessary, what felt right. At 2:15, the front door opened. 3 men walked in. The restaurant went quiet, because everyone recognized the first man, Vincent Marcello, Vinny, accompanied by 2 associates, both large men, both serious expressions. Louis's band members froze, eyes wide, fear immediate. We're dead, one whispered. He's here for revenge, another said. Customers in the restaurant noticed the tension, started standing up, moving toward exits, preparing to leave quickly because everyone knew. When Vinny Marcello showed up with associates, business was about to happen, and business in Chicago's underworld usually meant trouble. Louis stood up, didn't run, didn't hide, just stood, faced Vinny, waited. Vinny walked through the restaurant, slowly, deliberately, his associates flanking him. The atmosphere was electric, tense, everyone watching, waiting for something to happen. Vinny reached Louis's table, stopped, looked at Louis. His expression was unreadable, serious, focused. Then Vinny did something unexpected, extended his hand for a handshake. Louis hesitated for just a moment, then took Vinny's hand, shook it, firmly, respectfully. Armstrong, Vinny said, his voice calm but authoritative. Last night you handled my wife with more class than any man in this city. Louis listened, said nothing. Let Vinny continue. She was drunk, Vinny admitted, embarrassed me. Put you in a bad position, but you made her feel respected. You reminded her who she belongs to. You protected my honor while protecting her dignity. That takes intelligence, that takes respect. You're a smart man, Louis nodded, still didn't speak. From now on, Vinny continued, you got my protection. Nobody touches you in Chicago. You perform anywhere. You're safe. You have problems, you come to me. You understand? Louis understood completely. This was Vinny's way of saying thank you, of acknowledging what Louis had done, of repaying the debt. In mob culture, this was significant. Protection meant safety, meant respect, meant opportunity. Mr. Marcello, Louis finally spoke, his voice respectful. I just did what felt right. Music brings out emotions. Your wife was moved by the song. That's a compliment to your taste in women? Vinny smiled. First real smile, like that response. You're diplomatic too. Good quality. He reached into his jacket. Everyone tensed. Thinking weapon. But Vinny pulled out an envelope, handed it to Louis. For your professionalism. Don't open it here, just know you earned it. Louis took the envelope, felt the thickness, knew it contained money, substantial money. Thank you, sir. That's generous. Vinny nodded. You ever have trouble in this town? You call me. My guys will find me. Louis has my protection. Understand, this last part was directed at everyone in the restaurant, establishing publicly that Louis was under Vinny's protection, that touching Louis meant answering to Vinny. In 1932 Chicago, this was invaluable. Vinny turned, walked out, his associates followed. The door closed. The restaurant stayed silent for several seconds, processing what just happened. Then slowly, conversations resumed. Band members looked at Louis with new respect. You just got mob protection, one said in awe. Do you know what that means? Louis did know. Meant he could perform anywhere without fear. Meant other club owners would welcome him. Meant troublemakers would leave him alone. Meant his restaurant was protected. Later that evening, after the restaurant closed, Louis opened the envelope in private. Inside were 50 $10 bills, $500. In 1932, this was enormous, equivalent to nearly $11,000 today. A fortune. But more than money, it represented respect. Represented Vinny's genuine gratitude. Represented the value Vinny placed on what Louis had done. Louis divided the money, gave generous portions to his band members, to restaurant staff, kept some for savings, for future investments, because Louis understood. This money was a gift But the real gift was the protection, the respect, the relationship with Vinnie. Over the following months and years, that protection proved invaluable. Louis performed at every major venue in Chicago, without harassment, without threats. Other musicians faced constant problems, demands for protection money, threats from rivals, violence. Louis faced none of this, because word had spread. Louis Armstrong had Vinnie Marcello's protection. Touch Louis, answer to Vinnie. It was that simple. Louis never abused this protection, never used it to threaten others, never acted entitled, just continued being professional, being respectful, being Louis. The relationship with Vinnie remained cordial. They weren't friends, weren't social, but there was mutual respect, understanding. Louis had saved Vinnie's pride. Vinnie had rewarded Louis's character. A fair exchange. In mob-controlled Chicago, Angela Marcello never returned to Green Mill when Louis performed. Whether by choice or by Vinnie's instruction wasn't clear, but she stayed away, avoided potential awkwardness, avoided temptation. Vinnie and Louis never spoke about that November night again. Didn't need to. What needed to be said had been said. What needed to be done had been done. The matter was closed. The lesson, however, remained. Louis had demonstrated something crucial. Words matter. Diplomacy matters. Understanding human nature matters. In a crisis, the person who stays calm and chooses words carefully often survives. The person who panics or responds aggressively often doesn't. Louis had stayed calm, had thought clearly, had spoken perfectly, and had turned a potentially deadly situation into a career-enhancing relationship. This wasn't the only time Louis would use diplomacy to navigate difficult situations. Throughout his career, he faced racism, faced discrimination, faced dangerous people and dangerous situations. Always, Louis responded with intelligence, with respect, with carefully chosen words. This wasn't weakness. This was wisdom. This was survival. This was how a black man succeeded in mid-century America. By being talented enough to be valued, diplomatic enough to avoid trouble, strong enough to maintain dignity, Louis Armstrong embodied all three. Years later, when Louis had become internationally famous, interviewers would ask about his Chicago years, about performing in mob clubs. Louis would smile, would acknowledge it happened, but would never tell specific stories, never name names, never betray confidences. Because Louis understood something fundamental, the past was past, but discretion was eternal. Respect was always required, and some stories were better left untold. The Green Mill still exists today, still a Chicago landmark, still features jazz music, tourists visit, music lovers come. Everyone knows the history, knows the legends, knows the stories. One of those stories is about November 1932, about a mob boss's wife, about a public declaration, about a perfect response, about how Louis Armstrong saved everyone with just a few words. The club has changed, Chicago has changed, the world has changed. But human nature remains the same. People still make mistakes, still get emotional, still need saving sometimes, and the way to save them is often the same. Stay calm, choose words carefully, respect everyone involved, give people a way to save face, make everyone feel valued. This is what Louis Armstrong did. This is what made him not just a great musician, but a great human being. Vincent Marcello passed away in 1948, 16 years after that November night. Had lived a complicated life, made many choices, some good, some questionable. But one choice was unquestionably good, the choice to respect Louis Armstrong, to reward his character, to protect his career. That choice created a positive ripple, helped Louis thrive in Chicago, helped him build his career, helped him become the legend he became. Angela Marcello lived much longer, passed away in the 1980s. In her later years, she occasionally spoke about the old days, about Chicago, about Green Mill, never specifically mentioned that November night, never acknowledged the incident, but friends said she always spoke highly of Louis Armstrong, always said he was a gentleman, always said he had class. In 1971, Louis Armstrong passed away, 70 years old, having changed music forever, having touched millions of lives, having navigated countless difficult situations with grace and wisdom. At his funeral, thousands came. Musicians, fans, friends, people whose lives Louis had touched. Among the attendees were several men who'd been connected to Chicago's organized leadership in the 1930s and 40s. Older now, retired, but still remembered. They came to pay respects, to honor a man who'd survived their world, who'd thrived in their world, who'd done it with dignity. One of them, speaking quietly to others, mentioned the Green Mill story. The night Angela Marcello declared love for Louis, the night Louis handled it perfectly, the night Vinny gave his protection, everyone nodded, remembered, acknowledged. That was Louis, one said. Always knew what to say, always stayed cool, always survived. Another added, he could have been killed that night, but he used his head, used his heart. Saved everyone, that's why we respected him, that's why Vinny protected him, that's why he's a legend. The funeral continued, tributes were given, music was played, tears were shed. But among those who knew the full story, there was something else. Admiration for a man who'd faced danger with grace, who'd turned enemies into protectors, who'd survived impossible situations, who'd done it all while maintaining his integrity, his kindness, his humanity. Today, when people study Louis Armstrong, they focus on the music, the trumpet innovations, the vocal techniques, the artistic achievements, all deserved, all important. But there's another story, a story about survival, about diplomacy, about choosing the right words at the right moment, about understanding that conflict can be diffused, that violence can be avoided, that intelligence beats aggression. The Green Mill story embodies this. A moment where everything could have gone wrong, where lives hung in balance, where the wrong word would have caused disaster, but the right words saved everyone, made everyone better, created something positive from something dangerous. This is Louis Armstrong's true genius. Not just musical talent, human wisdom, the ability to see situations clearly, to understand people deeply, to respond appropriately, to make everyone feel respected, to turn crisis into opportunity. The trumpet made Louis famous, but wisdom made Louis eternal. The music made people love him, but character made people protect him. The performances entertained millions, but the life inspired generations. When you face your own difficult moment, when words matter more than anything, when the wrong response could destroy everything, remember Louis Armstrong, remember Green Mill, remember November 1932. Remember that staying calm matters. That choosing words carefully matters, that respecting everyone matters, that giving people a way out matters, that wisdom beats violence, that diplomacy beats aggression, that grace under pressure defines character. Louis Armstrong wasn't just the greatest trumpet player, was the greatest diplomat, the greatest survivor, the greatest example of how to live with dignity in a world that doesn't always make it easy. The mob boss's wife shouted, "I love you," and Louis Armstrong responded with words that saved her husband, saved himself, saved everyone, with wisdom, with grace, with perfect words at the perfect moment. That's the legacy. That's the lesson. That's why Louis Armstrong will never be forgotten, not just for the music, for the humanity, forever.